Hi everyone, Tony Tonkin here from my show, The Tony Tonkin Show. What I'm going to do today is I want to talk about subjects which I'm really familiar with, subjects which I've been a party to for most of my 30-year career. Now, during that time, I've spoken to thousands of people in relation to how they're managing their relationships, how they're communicating with each other. And I guess what I need to say is that during that time, I've kind of come upon some key elements that are required in order for a relationship to be successful or not. And most of that time, I've worked with a range of families from constructs around just a normal heterosexual family, I guess, to lesbian and gay relationships as well. And I've come to understand that there are some key ingredients that are required in order for any of us to have a relationship that has any great meaning or significance. Now, I want to be able to go through those with you today so that you can better understand what it is that you may need to do to improve your relationship. Now, no relationship is easy. They're all difficult. I've had a number of them in my life. I'm fortunate to say that I've had the most continuous relationship is the one I had now, which has been for over 30 years with the most fabulous woman. But what I have learned during my experiences also of my own relationships, I think can best inform you about how you can have yours and how you can conduct your relationship that's helpful to you. Now, as I go through this video and as you're watching it, if you have questions that you'd like to ask me, I suggest that you put them in the content in the area below, the chat below. And if you wish to have a subject discussed that perhaps you would like more information about, then I would like to hear from you as well. I know that because my channel is not all that large, I don't have all that many people who go online while I'm doing a live feed. I just wish to do more of these live feeds to get people familiar with the idea that they can communicate with me live while we're having this discussion, and I'm hoping that over time more and more people will avail themselves of that. And if you'd like to subscribe to my channel, which would be great, which is really what I'm looking for, and ring the bell if you'd just like to have further notifications. So what I need to say about relationships, though, I guess, is that they come in all different shapes and sizes. Everybody is an individual within a relationship, expecting to be able to have specific needs and desires met while they're negotiating how that relationship should look. Now, I know from experience that relationships are based primarily on attraction to start with and on your sexual activity, in fact. So initially, a relationship can seem to be exciting. It can appear to be something you've never experienced before. It can be the most wonderful, blissful time of your life. But a relationship isn't always about that honeymoon period. A relationship is far more involved with that, particularly if you're wishing to have a long-term relationship. And I think most people who enter a relationship are expecting that intimate relationship to have significant meaning to them, and that most people would expect that it to be a long-term relationship. Granted, there are many people who have relationships whereby they are just simply enjoying the sex and they want to have multiple relationships. And I've worked with people that want polyamorous type relationships. And so the type of relationship, I guess, that a person could desire is wide-ranging and can be quite involved. But each relationship requires a certain amount of commitment and a certain amount of understanding as to kind of what you want out of the relationship, even if it's a polyamorous relationship. What does that look like for you? What are your expectations from that relationship? And how can you get the best out of a relationship that's going to benefit you? What I've discovered over the years is that many relationships eventually turn sour. We know that probably about 50% of relationships are unsuccessful. Now, not everybody enters a relationship expecting it to be so, but it is what eventually does tend to happen, that it becomes toxic in some way and one or both of the partners decide that the relationship has to end. Neither of them necessarily want it to end, but at the end of the day, that's kind of what happens. If you're one of those persons that either struggles with relationships, and whether you want to have a long-term relationship or you don't really care, I guess some of this stuff will still be of interest to you, particularly if you want a longer-term relationship. If your relationships continue to fail, then one of the reasons why, well, I guess if it continues to fail, then we need to look at the reasons why it does so and what you can do to rectify that, so that any relationship you may have in the future or any current relationship you have that's going unwell may change and be able to have relationships that have greater meaning. So I have 4 things that I think are important to understand about relationships, and I hope some of these ideas will be helpful to you. In my own life, I know that I've had different types of relationships because at certain times in my life, I've needed certain things. So, when I look at my first really serious relationship, which was a woman that I married and wound up leaving, was because I was naive. I had no sense of what relationships meant. I felt kind of pushed and manipulated, I guess, to some extent into that relationship. And as a result of that, I was lost throughout the whole relationship. It lasted for 11 and a half years, but during that, and which time I had 2 great kids. But it was a time in which I didn't understand myself. I didn't know what it was that I specifically wanted or needed in a relationship, and lo and behold, it failed. So, and then I had a number of relationships after that until I finally came to the one that I've currently had for over 30 years. So we all want certain things from a relationship. We also have certain needs that need to be met. And we're hoping when we begin our relationship that that is the way it's going to be. Unfortunately, it doesn't often turn out that way. And sometimes it doesn't turn out the way we want it to. And that can be a good thing, because there may be some lessons that we've learned during that time with that person that helps us to understand who we are, helps us to understand how we can become involved in relationships and what type of relationships are more important to us and how we should go about getting it. But this only happens if we are able to take a retrospective look at the relationships that we've been in and why it is that they were unsuccessful. I've worked a lot with men over the years who simply have entered into the same types of relationships over and over again, that they've found that those relationships were the same, that the lessons that they needed to learn just weren't learned. They weren't able to look at their own behaviour and acknowledge how that should have changed. I also must confess that I've worked a lot with women who do the same. They look for a certain type of male, that these are heterosexual relationships we're talking about, but they usually choose, for some bizarre reason, the same type of person, and as a result, that relationship keeps failing. And one has to ask, well, what is there about you making these particular choices about certain type of people? Why is it that men make certain choices about certain women that they would wish to go out with? And why is it that those relationships tend to fail? Now, having a look back at how we've responded to relationships is an extremely helpful activity. And if you really want to get involved in that, I suggest you have a chat to a psychologist or a social worker who specialises in working in relationships to better understand your position and why it is you make the decisions that you make. So the first thing we're going to look at is a pretty vital area, and the first one is communication. Sorry, wrong slide there. The first one is communication. And this is important because what we need to do is find out why that isn't coming up, which is a pain in the butt, but I'll just rectify that in just a second. Yep, we will organise that in a moment. So the communication is important because we all have different ways of wanting to communicate. Some of us are forthright, some of us are direct, some of us talk about the things that matter to us, others don't. But the thing that we fail to talk about most, I think, is our emotions, how we're actually feeling about any particular event, how we're feeling about ourselves, how we're feeling about how the relationship looks. These are important things for us to express, but the problem that we have is that most of us don't express those feelings adequately. We don't talk about our emotions. We don't discuss our emotions in great detail. We don't have language to sit around our emotions. I did a session actually a little while back on men and emotions and why it is that we don't talk about and understand our emotions differently. And I think that we need to find better ways to communicate with others about how it is that we're feeling at any particular given time, and find the appropriate language that best describes those particular emotions. So that's the first thing. The second thing about communication is that we really need to look at the way we go about saying things and how we're responding to whatever is said, because sometimes we say things which are directly hurtful of another person and don't consider for a moment how that particular person may be feeling in response to whatever it is that we've said. Now, this is some people think that for a particular reason that they're entitled to be able to say whatever it is that they want to say. That that I can be direct and honest, often people will say, but sometimes being direct and honest is unhelpful because people are offended when we're direct at them, because we believe that we're entitled to say whatever it is that we need to say, but we forget that the other person may be receiving it in a way which perhaps is unhelpful to them. So sometimes being direct and us thinking that we're being honest is unhelpful. The other thing too that people tend to do is that they want to blame other people for whatever is happening to them. So if you're feeling attacked by somebody else, you blame them for that. If you're feeling that you're feeling resentful because someone's doing something that you don't like them doing, you often might feel resentful for that. So this is about taking responsibility. So if I'm behaving in a way that's infecting somebody else, and that particular person is feeling targeted, if they're feeling resentful, if they're feeling abused by what it is that you're saying or doing, then you need to take responsibility for the impact that that behaviour is having on another person. Now, sometimes most people will say, well, the intent wasn't to harm that person, that I wanted to be able to express what I disliked, but it was taken the wrong way, that person became offended by what it was that I was saying. Now, the thing about communication, taking responsibility, is that it's not the message given that is very important. It's actually the message that is received. So it's about how we deliver that message to people and how reflective we are on why it is that we deliver the message in a certain way. The best example I can give of that is that if a woman comes home late and she told her partner that she's going to be home at say 2 hours earlier, and she's 2 hours late, so she's home at 12 o'clock. She said she'd be home at 10. And he's reflecting over and over again on the fact that she's late. So when he does that, often they're cooking up ideas. These thoughts are happening about, where is she, what's she doing? It goes to, who she's seeing, and it just becomes way out of proportion to the actual event. So when she arrives home, he's already agitated, and he expresses that in ways which are unhelpful. So he's attacking, his tone is demeaning, he puts her down, he does all these terrible things that makes her feel like crap. Well, I'm never going to tell him when I'm going out again, and I'm never going to let him know particularly what time it is, and this is none of his business, and I was just having a good time, and it was all so innocent. Why are you making such a bloody big deal out of it? So that is poor communication to start with, and it's not taking responsibility for your behaviour and how that has impacted the other person. Checking a person's phone, for example, because you're suspicious of what they're doing and whatever, is not taking responsibility for the fact that, that is an unhelpful act. That is saying, I do not trust you. And in terms of communication, we could have conversations with people about what it is that we're feeling and why we're feeling that way. So when people are mistrustful, we have to be asking, well, why is it that that person is so mistrustful? It might be because they have a history where they've had partners in the past who have simply cheated on them, or they might have other reasons as to why they don't trust people. And one of the biggest issues, I think, is that some people want to be able to control the relationship. And this breaks both ways for both men and women and gay relationships and whatever, because, if you're struggling to be loved, if being loved is vital to you, and it's important that you have a sense that you're cared for and that you're nurtured, sometimes the need for that is so deep and so strong that people will do whatever they can to get it. And the behaviours that accompany that are so damaging and so harmful that it just pushes the other person away. So when it comes to communications and taking responsibility, sometimes it's really important just to be able to have conversations with another person about why those issues are so ingrained in you. So it's about acknowledging the behaviour, that the behaviour is unhelpful. It's acknowledging that I'm having trouble talking to you about this because you may not understand. And then as a result of all of that, of not doing those things, the behaviour becomes exacerbated, it becomes increased, it becomes more and more harmful over time. So, number one, find ways to communicate appropriately. Look, and try to remember that the person you want to communicate is more than likely to hear what you have to say. If it's a genuine effort to be understood, then that person will understand you. If it's a solid, if it's a reasonable relationship, if you've already bastardized this relationship by acting badly, getting back to that point, it's going to be really hard, I can tell you now. But if you start the relationship by opening up ways to communicate, taking responsibility for the way you've behaved and endeavouring to rectify it, don't keep saying I'm sorry every time you fuck up, but just say, look, this is the behaviour, these are the reasons why I'm behaving this way, I know it's unhelpful, we can work together to resolve this. If you can get that part of the relationship right, there's a good chance that this relationship will survive. The problem that most people have is that going back and introspectively looking at why behaviours are there in the first place is difficult for a lot of people because it comes with a lot of pain about things that have happened in the past that have caused a sense of uncertainty about what it is that you need to get out of a relationship and actually how to get that. And sometimes we've had modelling around that from our own parents and from others, which has been unhelpful because they've never been able to rectify their relationships, and we've taken all that on board, and we think, for whatever reason, that that's the way one should have a relationship, when in fact, even though those people may have stayed together, it was a toxic relationship and unhelpful. So just looking back, that's one of the important things that you do. As I said, find yourself a counsellor or therapist who will be able to help you with that. Now, the other thing I wanted to look at was needs. So meeting others' needs. Now, this is a struggle for a lot of people, because number one, people have trouble articulating what particularly are their needs, what do they want out of a relationship, and trying to understand what your own needs are. And sometimes they're different. For example, I have a need whereby I need to know where you are all the time, right? Well, the question is, why do you have that need? And is that need compatible with that of your partner? So they may feel constricted, surveyed, interrogated by this notion that you want to keep knowing where they are and who they're with. Now, some needs are unhelpful, and that would be one of them. You know, the need to be loved and to be nurtured, that's an important need. The question you need to be asking is, how do I get that? What do I need from the other person that gives me that? Now, for some people, that can be about being held, being cuddled, being respected. It's a whole host of stuff. For others, it may not be about necessarily some of those things. It might be more about doing some things for that person, thinking of them on their birthday, making arrangements to go out for dinner, taking control of certain things that you know that they would like you to do, going to see plays or movies or whatever it might be. Whatever you understand to be things that they enjoy can be their needs. So part of communication and taking responsibility is to be able to discuss with your partner the things that they need. Now, they may not necessarily be your needs. For example, the one for me is I need to go to the football because I love football, but my wife doesn't. So that is a need that I have. She respects that need. It doesn't include her, but it's something that I enjoy. And so we all have those diverging needs. We have needs in our lives that the other person will not participate in, but at the end of the day are issues that we need to do. So, and to know that if you can articulate those needs, they're not going to interfere with the other person's needs. So going to the football doesn't mean that I love my wife less. It doesn't mean that I'm not participating in other aspects of our lives that we enjoy doing together. It is just something that I enjoy doing and is acceptable. I have another thing. My wife has a need. She likes going into the garden. I don't like gardening. She understands that. We've negotiated that over the years, even though it hasn't always been difficult. It hasn't always been easy. But it is a need that I have. So sometimes we just need to work out what our needs are, accept that they might be different, but organise it in such a way, negotiate it in such a way that it doesn't interfere with the other person, I guess. So working out your needs, understanding the other person's needs, and ensuring that you're meeting each other's needs are really important. Again, it is about communicating, and it is about taking responsibility for things that you might do that are unhelpful in the relationship in terms of having your specific needs met. So finally, I want to talk about this one, which is about being kind and gentle. So sometimes it seems like an easy thing, doesn't it, to say, let's be kind, but with kindness, I think, comes respect. So let's demonstrate to this person that I respect them. I want to let you know right now that you can't have a relationship if you fail to be kind, if you fail to be respectful, and if you can't demonstrate just being gentle. They're important qualities. So ensure that you're doing whatever you can to make sure that you are kind and gentle. So ask yourself this: what kind act, what kind act can I do that would demonstrate that I love this person? So that's where we need to understand that person's needs, because we need to do things that are kind and respectful, that are meeting their needs. We don't get kind. The other person will not receive kindness if you're doing things that she just doesn't like. You know, don't do things which are going to be about satisfying you more than they are about satisfying her. Do things that are gentle. So, for example, if a person enjoys the tactile stuff, then one of the most kindest things, now this sounds really bizarre, I've done this with many couples over the years, one of the kindest things to do is just to massage their hands, their fingers. It's a very sensual thing to do, I hasten to add, but it is a kind and gentle thing to do. And it is you providing something for them that causes them to be relaxed. It's tactile, so it's about being close. So find out what sort of things that you believe your partner will enjoy that are kind and gentle. And sometimes that is about being kind and gentle to those other people that your partner loves and cherishes in their lives too. So being kind to their friends, being kind to relationships that they have is really important to them. Don't be disrespectful of people that you may yourself not really like or get on well with, but don't be disrespectful of people that your partner loves or has in their world. So I hope that some of those things have been helpful to you. If you've got any questions, just email them to me, Max, on the email address that you see on screen. And just remember please to subscribe and ring the bell. Relationships are vital. We all want them, mostly. Not everybody, I guess, but most people want a relationship. Try and find a way by which you can have one in which you're taking responsibility for your behaviour, where your communication skills have improved so that you're not putting the other person down and you're listening to what they have to say, that you're looking for the needs to be met from both yourself and your partner, and they're not conflicting needs, and finally, to make sure that you're being kind and gentle to the person that you're cherishing the most in your life at that particular time. Take care, everybody. Look after yourselves. And more importantly, be safe.